We're in the information age, but facts are in short supply. Reject the noise, ask bold questions, and seek the truth with FBI whistleblower and common sense extremist Steve Friend. This is the American Radicals Podcast.
It is the American Radicals Podcast. It's February 2nd, 2026, coming live on rumble.com/amradpod and on YouTube at amradpod1. You can also find us over at X, America News, and at Real Steve Friend. But if you're following us over on Twitter, just hop on over to Rumble and YouTube, join the chat. Lots of fun as always, you guys. Appreciate you being in there waiting for us, 12 o'clock Eastern time every single weekday. And if you like to listen to the audio form of the show, which we will upload right after we get done recording today, you can do that on iTunes, iHeart, Spotify. Let's grow it, guys. Follow us over there and we can get bigger and radicalize more Americans. So a brand new week. What are we going to be diving into today? One of my favorite topics to talk about, one of those topics that nobody seems to concentrate on. It's an umbrella topic, language. Today will be all about the semantics. I found an interesting Substack about the language usage and misusage by the left as it comes to a Supreme Court case involving boys who want to play with girls because they're due to feel pretty, and how the left is able to manipulate language in order to get its goals through our legal system. Also, the FBI touting a top 10 arrest. A lot of semantics involved there, hiding what really went on. A politician is threatening to kill the president of the United States. Some really naughty language in that case. A stealth revolution is actually occurring in Minnesota, and we're going back to the moon, sort of. So, a lot to get to. Let's get after it. Had an interesting experience with language at the end of last week. You know, we do the chores. We like to do the laundry, clean the sheets and the towels on Fridays in the Friend household. And Madam Friend came to me and said, "Hey, can you help me make the beds?" Sure. Absolutely. No problem. And then I went to go and I presumed help her make the bed. So I was standing there, I was waiting around, and I'm not the idling type, but she never came in the room to help make the bed. Because when she said, "Can you help me make the beds?" she meant, "Can you help me and make the beds?" It was a solo delineation there. She was delegating that mission to me. But I heard her saying, "Help me." And that to me was sort of it's not just a men are from Mars, women are from Venus situation, because I habla the fairer sex language a fair amount. It's sort of an indication to me of the mindset that creates. I was in the mindset that we'd be doing it together. And I sat there for like 5 or 10 minutes when I could have already had the entire thing done. And it's just a domicile sort of situation, but I think it's a real life example of how language is just so important, and it can be used to change your mindset and actually affect the way that you take action or don't take action. So for the topics we want to get to today, I want to get to this first one, a Substack. It comes from Reality's Last Stand, and it's entitled Just Semantics. And it relates to the Supreme Court case currently going on about dudes who feel pretty wanting to play sports with the girls. So from the piece, stated in ordinary language, the question before the court is simple. Should the law recognize biological sex when allocating sex-based protections? Sex is a legally relevant distinction. Excluding male athletes from female-only sports is constitutionally permissible when the classification serves a remedial purpose. Pause it there. Remedial purpose. It's kind of nerdy. It's kind of courtroom speak, lawyerese. Hey, Steve, there's people that go to college and then they go to law school so they can speak that language, so I don't have to. Remedial. It means that they can remedy the situation. They can fix the problem. There has to be a fix there because it's honestly not fair for Some individuals who have a twig and berries and lots of testosterone, and as a result, thicker bone structure and more muscle development, greater overall strength and stamina to compete against the fairer sex. Harry can't be Sally. So when we have constitutional protections, equal rights, there is a remedy here. Because otherwise, you'd say, well, we're all equal under the law, and I guess the gals are going to have to compete against the guys. Well, no, it's actually constitutional to discriminate against individuals who have a set of testicles because it is not a fair competition. That's the way traditionally we've looked at it. But now there's been some manipulation with the language as it's been presented before the Supreme Court in order to get the ends that the communists want in this case. So back from reality's last stand, just semantics. Once the issue is reframed in gender jargon, not sex, gender and sex are different, right? Because sex is assigned at birth, according to the communists, and gender is a spectrum. I mean, you could identify one way today and another way tomorrow. Today, you're a dude. Tomorrow, you're an attack helicopter. Let's just pump you full of diesel. But gender jargon, the cases appear to the uninformed as matters of discrimination and exclusion. If a male child is linguistically transformed, because you can't actually transform a male, right? You can't make Harry into a Sally, but you can do it through language. So if you linguistically transform a male into a girl, then excluding, quote, her no longer appears to be lawful. It's unconstitutional. And there's really two basic ways of looking at language in this piece here. It's a reference to some philosophical areas, but it's worth bringing up. There's the word to world, where we have language that describes reality. That's the way it's supposed to be. You say tree because you see a tree. You say sky because you see the sky. You say boy because you see a boy. Word to world. And then there's also world to word in inversion, where it says that we make reality conform to our language. So we see a dude and we say, well, no, that's a girl because he feels pretty. Now, we're in the philosophical realm, but I think we can go to the practical realm here, and even just apart from the gender stuff. But I can start there because I've got some real world examples here. When we're talking about the T of the LGBTQAI plus underscore hashtag asterisk rainbow kamikaze madness that's gripped the country for the last 15 minutes or so, there's an inversion of language. It changes the way you view things because gender affirming care versus conversion therapy. Those are two different things, and they mean exactly the opposite of what the word to world, the reality actually is. Gender affirming care. Examining those three words. That would mean, if you live in the real world, that Harry comes to you and says, I feel like a girl. I think I'm a Sally. And you say, no, I'm going to affirm the gender that you are. Harry, you are a Harry. But according to the left, and the way that they've been able to linguistically manipulate us now, gender affirming care is you saying, well, gender is a spectrum, and Harry thinks he's a Sally now, so you have to affirm the new gender. Gender affirming care is telling Harry, yes, you are in fact a Sally. Similarly and nonsensically, you have conversion therapy. Conversion therapy is pretty straightforward to me, at least the way I understand and habla the English language. Therapy that would convert. So make Harry into a Sally, right? Oh, no, 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 no. Conversion therapy, according to the communists, is Harry says, I feel like a Sally. And you say, no, no, Harry, a man can't become a woman. That it just isn't a thing in the real world. You're trying to convert him back to being what he actually is. Makes perfect sense, right? No, not at all. But language is important because language is able to be used to manipulate the legal structures in the country and also change the way that we approach things. We approach them less aggressively. We're more passive, as we'll get to in the revolution that's currently going on in Minnesota. But some other examples that are worth just throwing out there as we're on the topic of just semantics, apart from the LGBTQ rainbow kamikaze, came up with a couple just off the top of my head. Let's talk about abortion. That's not the original term. I mean, you want to just be straightforward with it. Baby murder. We could be scientific. Infanticide. That doesn't sound really nice, right? So we need to just shade it a little bit, just take a little bit off the edge there. So baby murder definitely is out. Infanticide, no, also a bad thing. So what can we call it? We can call it termination. But I saw Terminator. He's the bad guy. Let's change it to abortion. The mission just never launched. We scrapped it entirely. There was not a life there. Let's go to abortion. And then that kind of fell out of favor because people kind of connected baby murder with abortion. So we had to shade it a little bit more. And we had to have a comparison between being pro baby murder and pro life. No, no, it'll be pro choice. Choice is a good thing. Don't you like to have options? Pro choice, pro life. Everybody's pro something, but that's not really effective in the overall debate for the communists. They have to shape you as the bad guy if you believe that it's murder to murder a baby. So it became pro choice and anti choice. Well, are you against choosing things? You're against freedom? And then it evolved even further. And we got to reproductive health, which is just a fake umbrella term, and reproductive justice. Reproductive justice is now swapped in for baby murder. When you say reproductive justice, you got justice for all, right? Freedom, it's all American. Changes the way everybody can approach that entire topic. On illegal immigration, illegal aliens. I pound that term all the time. I like to insert it every time I read on this program from the Washington Post, because democracy dies in darkness, or the New York Times, at one point a newspaper, or any of these other mainstream sources that refuse to use the actual term illegal aliens, because they'll say undocumented immigrants. And then they'll talk about asylum seekers and refugees and parolees and internally displaced persons, climate displaced persons. And then lately, neighbors. Well, do you really want to get rid of your neighbors? Yes, they're illegal aliens. March them down Trail of Tears style to the Rio Grande, and then station an 18-year-old with lots of testosterone, a Harry, and anger issues atop a Humvee with a 50 cal, making sure they don't come back. I'm the bad guy because I believe in defending the borders, one of the few charges that we have as part of our social compact with our federal government. Protect the borders. But I'm the bad guy because I'm getting rid of our neighbors. One more, and that'll be a good place we can kind of pivot off this actual original article here. Crime. People who engage in crime are criminals, right? I mean, when they get convicted, some of them are felons. Not anymore. They're justice-involved persons. It's a lot more syllables. It sounds, a little bit more, a little bit nicer, not as harsh. But you see how it's able to, the communists can grab onto your language, bastardize it, and even get to the point where it is 180 degrees different than what those words have traditionally meant throughout all of time when we had an English language. And they're able to seize onto institutional power with it and change your mindset. You're back on your heels. You don't want to get rid of those neighbors. You don't want to convert somebody, right? You want to be against justice. It's very powerful. Language is not nerdy. It's extremely powerful, and it's extremely important. All right, now, that's in the theoretical, the 30,000-foot view, the philosophical type of conversations we have here. Let's talk about some stuff where the language is important. The semantics are relevant, and begin over at the ex-girlfriend, where the director of the FBI, one Kashyap Patel, at FBI Director Cash, because he's a douchebag, it goes by his first name. And this was an announcement that he put out there a little over a week ago, and it highlights a Vanity Fair article that is describing a dramatic takedown of an FBI top 10 most wanted individuals. So, from Director Patel, this was a zero-margin, high-risk operation. Our FBI HRT, which means the hostage rescue team, that's the Tier 1 team, full-time SWAT team. They executed with precision, discipline, and total professionalism alongside our Mexican partners to bring Ryan James Wedding back to face justice. One of the most dangerous criminals in the world is now off the streets. Well, he's kind of set up here. It's high speed, low drag, referencing this Vanity Fair article, which I went to find out just how crazy this whole operation was. So Kash Patel boarded an FBI Boeing 757 private jet, paid for by you, the taxpayer, bound for Mexico. In under 48 hours, he would come face to face with the man whose image had been plastered across FBI 10 most wanted posters, Ryan James Wedding. This was this Canadian skier, went to the Olympics, and he wound up being a drug dealer, and he's been on the lam for a number of years, and he's in the FBI top 10 most wanted, which is a scam in and of itself. Top 10, right? Well, 10 is a nice round number. It sounds clean. Semantics. Most wanted. Ordinarily, what happens is somebody's wanted by the FBI, some criminal they have a case on. And then when the investigators get close to being able to bring that person into custody, they put them on the top 10 list so that when they arrest them, they can announce that they got a top 10 most wanted. It's really not that hard. You just look at the posters and see when they were added to it. Wouldn't be surprised if there's a policy change where they take away the time that they put the person to the list just because they want to muddy the waters a little bit more. But semantics, because this was represented to be a high-speed, low-drag, zero-sum game with the best operators that the FBI, America's preeminent, premier, self-anointed law enforcement agency for the country, put forward to get this evil, diabolical, modern-day Pablo Escobar, according to Kash Patel. So again, from Vanity Fair, where we're regaled with a story from Kash and from Vanity Fair that put this out so that they can then write a puff piece about Alexis Wilkins, who's Kash's girlfriend. She's definitely his girlfriend, not just a girl who's his friend. It says the rescue team was prepared for numerous outcomes, including having to use significant force to apprehend Wedding. Okay, is he a Delta Force guy, Navy SEAL, or is he just a Canadian snowboarder? But they represent it that way. Patel and the FBI hostage rescue team transported Wedding from Mexico to Los Angeles, where he faces charges of cocaine trafficking and murder. But there's more to the story. So this comes from The Independent. Here it is. This is Kash Patel's incessant posting has flared tensions with Mexico over seizure of former Olympian drug lord. So maybe Kash was playing a little bit fast and loose with his language here. And this website's a little bit distracting, so I'll take it down and look at it. Again, that comes from The Independent. So the DOJ announced the arrest of Ryan Wedding. Ron Johnson, not the senator from Wisconsin, he's the U.S. ambassador to Mexico, said that Wedding, who allegedly had the protection of the notorious Sinaloa cartel, surrendered to authorities in Mexico City. So did we send the tier 1 guys down there to go and do a zero-sum game and engage in violence against this guy who, as a Canadian snowboarder, I guess, could pick up a snowboard and beat them over the head with it or something? Or did he surrender so that the FBI could claim credit for a top 10 guy? Well, there's now a little bit more controversy over it because the president of Mexico is weighing in. And over at CNN, we have this one. Headline reads, Ryan Wedding, Mexico's president, pushes back on FBI Director Kash Patel's telling of pro snowboarder's arrest. So the Mexican president, what's her name? Claudia something or other. I think I remember it. So Claudia Scheinbaum, according to her, the surrender of Ryan Wedding was a direct result of pressure. No, I'm sorry, guys. I'm looking off screen, looking at the wrong one. Here it is. Ryan Wedding pled not guilty to drug trafficking charges before a California court on Monday. His attorney, Anthony Colombo, said this week that Wedding did not surrender, but the president of Mexico, she put out a posting on Instagram that looked like he was. And later on, there was debate about whether or not there was artificial intelligence that generated a fake image. And we have all of this controversy. So you go to CNN, you go to Independent, they're not big fans of Kash Patel or Donald Trump because he's mean orange, literally Hitler. But then also you have Kash Patel, who's his own hype guy. I went to one more source, again, trying to find out what those words they're saying actually mean. I went to the U.S. Embassy and Consulate in Mexico. Headline reads here, Ryan Wedding surrender and U.S.-Mexico cooperation. The surrender of Ryan Wedding was a direct result of pressure applied by Mexican and U.S. law enforcement working in close coordination and cooperation. That is something the Mexican president still to date has denied. She said that none of her people were involved in this zero-sum game. Wedding surrender was a result of determined work of multiple authorities from both Mexico and the United States, and then they list off a bunch of agencies. So we really don't have a definitive answer, lots of conflicting information. The language is important, though. We got FBI top 10, makes you think, oh man, they're going about getting the worst of the worst. He's a violent guy who, no evidence other than he's a drug dealer. Hostage rescue team, down there working with partners, not working with partners. We had to go and snag this guy, zero-sum game, or did he surrender? Lots of confusion. Well, let me just lay out the potentials here, and then what I think is probably the most likely. Well, potential one, this guy surrendered. We got that from the consulate. We got that from the Mexican president, but then we're seeing some other reporting, okay? Another option, the United States Department of Justice, FBI, worked with their counterparts in Mexico on some sort of joint operation to bring down this massive drug dealer. Okay, but again, conflicting information there. And then there's the scariest option, which, because it's Kash Patel, you have to go with in my mind, because he's retarded and he's going to do the dumbest possible thing because he's worried about his image, which is why he goes to Vanity Fair to say that, no, Alexis isn't a girl who's his friend. She's really his girlfriend. I think that the director of the FBI sent the hostage rescue team into Mexico to do an independent operation outside of any sort of cooperation with Mexican authorities because he wants to be little Donald Trump. That's why he tells you that he's the 9th FBI director, like Donald Trump is the 47th president. He's little Donald Trump. He wants to do a little Maduro operation in Mexico, where the president, as the chief commander-in-chief of the military, I mean, you could debate the legality of what went on there, but he sent special forces down to Venezuela to depose Maduro. I think Kash Patel likely sent his guys, his Delta Force, down to Mexico to do a cheap, generic version, little man of Donald Trump and go and get this drug dealer who they knew exactly where he was the entire time, so it really wasn't that dangerous, but he wanted to feel good about himself. All right, we can get off the ex-girlfriend and now talk about some politicians who, one in particular, aspiring to become the Attorney General of the state of Ohio and using just semantics, or could this actually be a threat to the current president of the United States? Give this one a play and we can react to it.
Hi, this is Elliot Forehand, candidate for Ohio Attorney General. I want to tell you what I mean when I say that I am going to kill Donald Trump. I mean, I'm going to obtain a conviction rendered by a jury of his peers at a standard of proof beyond a reasonable doubt, based on evidence presented at a trial conducted in accordance with the requirements of due process, resulting in a sentence duly executed of capital punishment. That is what I mean when I say that I am going to kill Donald Trump.
All right, so that guy's crazy, and he's desperate for attention. But semantics matter, right? He's running on that. It'll be a bumper sticker line. It'll be something he sends out to fundraise for a campaign or get a viral moment on social media. He had to clean it up after the fact, but how many people see him doing this weak cleanup? He said, I'm going to kill the president. Vote for me. Semantics matter. How many crazy people are like, that's my quarterback right there? This is the mindset that we're in right now. And that's a little bit of a glimpse into the madness that we're getting. That's in Ohio, but I think it translates really well over to what we're seeing in Minnesota. So a couple issues I want to get into on Minnesota and the evolution or the devolution of the language there and the way that we sort of have this revolution happening, but it's a stealth revolution. So from the American Mind, Kyle Schidler, who's a good guy, hung out with him a little bit. Gosh, at this point, it was like a year and a half, 2 years ago. But he's an expert on domestic terrorism and works for the Center for Security Policy. And this was a piece he put out, theamericanmind.org. Headline is, "The Revolution is On in Minnesota." Renee Good and her significant other were actively involved in an organization that was called Minnesota Ice Watch. The group promotes a manual to de-arrest tactics, which they use to assault law enforcement and then allow fellow activists time to escape. While the media has portrayed Minnesota Ice Watch as a kind of community service project, it's really about creating a pipeline to transform progressive soccer moms into anarchist revolutionaries. Attacks on ICE officers aren't intended as protests against a policy. Organizers view them as a way to draw normal Americans into joining a revolution. See, it's a lot more complicated than just activating people to go out and say, hey, exercise your First Amendment rights. You don't agree with what's going on. It's not that, according to Kyle here. I think he makes a pretty compelling case. It's not a disagreement with the policy. Make your voices heard. The First Amendment says you have the right to assemble and to speak and redress your grievances and issue a petition. No, it's a recruiting effort. And they put out these manuals to get people activated and informed. And also, they manipulate the way that people engage with the English language to present their side as the heroes, as opposed to the heels who are hell-bent on overthrowing our government and the way that we operate and have for the last 250 years in this country. So I got this, which was a connection that Kyle put out there. The headline is Rapid Response Networks in the Twin Cities. Rapid Response Networks. I mean, that sounds docile, right? Well, it's actually more than that. This is an affiliation group called Crime the Inc. That is affiliated with this Minnesota Ice Watch that Renee Good was part of. And they talk about in this piece dispatchers. But I understand dispatchers being prior law enforcement. Those are the folks that take the 911 calls and put out the information to the police officers, the fire department, the EMS, and say, oh, somebody needs help. I'm going to dispatch you there. But they're using the term dispatchers for foot and vehicle patrols running rotating surveillance, running license plates of vehicles that belong to ICE. Also, multiple hotels, rental car companies have been targeted with multi-layered campaigns aimed at forcing them to stop serving ICE officers, and similar efforts have sought to pressure restaurants into not serving agents. The common theme is forcing a choice. You're either with the government or you're with the revolution. Now, they're smart enough to not call themselves revolutionaries. They play with the language. They play with the semantics in order to garner support and manipulate the way people think about them. So back to Kyle's piece here, and he gives some really good examples of this. Efforts to establish the revolutionaries as the true authority are known as community self-defense. Can you think of anything that sounds more small r Republican than that? Community self-defense. I mean, shoot, I've talked about it on this program more than times that I care to remember. Small r Republican form of government, community self-defense. I will dig my heels into the ground to protect my town. You will not come here. Plays on people's heartstrings. That's a very traditionally American value set. Community self-defense. Against who, though? They also call it dual power. All right, well, we have a local system of government. The doctrine of the lesser magistrate. You could see how maybe you could pull some people that typically are constitutionally minded, right of center, to at least hear that language and say, I'm going to hear these guys out here. What are they actually talking about? Now, efforts to establish the revolutionaries as the true authority are known as community self-defense, and they also refer to the federal agents as not federal agents. I mean, they'll call them Gestapo and Nazis because, that's really emotional. That's the sort of stuff that Ohio Attorney General candidate would throw out there. But to the layperson, they'll call them kidnappers. There's these kidnappers who are coming after our neighbors. And by assaulting them is engaging in community self-defense. We're serving and protecting the community. Serve and protect, where have you seen that? On the back of just about every single police patrol car you've ever seen in your life. So now, by using semantics, the revolutionaries have characterized themselves actually as the authority figure. And they're engaging in small r Republican form of government. It's very traditionally American, isn't it? Meanwhile, They're able to recruit and bring people over to their god-awful way of thinking, where they want to overthrow the United States government and allow an unlimited number of illegal aliens, not migrants, asylum seekers, or neighbors, into the country. And it's all by doing it through language. The public is confused and indignant that riots are met with lawful force. Hey, why are they out there with those masked figures, kitted up, wearing body armor with their long guns, those weapons of war, going after people who are just engaged in serving and protecting their neighbors? Community self-defense. It's a language war on top of an actual physical war here. And they're getting some over-the-top support, air support, we'll call it. I mean, this is the print format, but you'll see it on television, and particularly in print format, from outlets like the Washington Post, because democracy dies in darkness. And this talks about how this tactic has resulted in the recruitment of 34,000 people right now in Minneapolis. Headline from Washington Post, because democracy dies in darkness, reads, thousands of new ICE watchers hit the streets after 2 killings. They're just watching. Community self-defense, after all. But Washington Post says more than 34,000 Minnesotans have signed up to be trained in U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement observers with various activist groups in recent weeks. For context, there are only 600 cops in Minneapolis. 34,000 people are going to call themselves observers engaging in community self-defense, i.e. likely to become rioters. And they outnumber them by 60-1. And the Washington Post, they say, many signed up when a federal agent shot and killed Renee Good, who the Washington Post describes as a poet and a mother of 3. Interesting how poetry comes before being a mom. The killings of Good and Alex Preddy underscore the dangers for the city's widespread resistance movement. Not rioting, just resistance. A loosely connected network of neighborhood volunteers, not rioters, not trained activists who are engaging in violence against law enforcement officers doing the job that we expect them to do as part of our social compact. They're neighborhood volunteers. Around the time that school began letting out, local folks stationed themselves on their own street corners to keep watch like quiet little sentinels, doing overwatch, protecting their community, saving their neighbors, serving and protecting. Just semantics? No, it's incredibly important and powerful. And you can see how they got 34,000 people to sign up for this garbage. People engaging likely in riotous, potentially treasonous sorts of activity that we see, and we'll see more and more of it as the weather gets warmer outside. It's going to lead to the ultimate question. Is boot going to come down on throat from the federal government standpoint? Are they going to try to find a middle way, which I don't think is actually possible? We can go softer and negotiate with the terrorists, or are they going to do what I think is the best option? It's the best of bad options, and I think national divorce. Acknowledge its ceded territory, withdraw of federal assets there, not just ICE and border protection, but all of the Department of Justice, Department of Homeland Security, Department of Veterans Affairs, Social Security, Interior, everything. You collect anything from the federal government, too bad. You can have it. You can have all your neighbors, I mean illegal aliens there, and we'll just leave you to it. It's ceded territory. It's suboptimal. It's not something I'm excited to talk about, but ultimately, if I'm involved in a relationship and I'm married and my wife is transing my kids and calling it gender affirming care and then taking our 401k and spending it on a bunch of Somalis, I need a divorce, not couples counseling. All right, one more we want to get to, and it's just semantics, but it's also kind of an interesting thing that I haven't seen reported anywhere else. So from Time, did you know we're going back to the moon? Kind of. Headline reads, astronauts are going back to the moon for the first time in half a century. Are you excited? One small step, right? And it talks about Artemis 2. It will take a crew farther from Earth than any human beings have ever traveled before. Apollo 13 currently holds the record. They were 158 miles past the moon. This one is going to go 4,700 miles past the moon. So a pretty big jump in distance. They're not going on the moon, though. They're going just past the moon. Not only will Artemis 2 be the first mission to reach the moon in more than half a century, it will also represent a, and follow the language, significant demographic and cultural shift. They'll have the first woman to go to the moon and the first person of color and the first non-American. Now, I think that this is all what they're calling an engineering mission. So they're not actually going to do any exploration. They're just bragging about how they're going to take some really cool pictures that will capture both the moon entirely and the Earth entirely. And then the next mission is going to try to land on the moon. But officially, it's supposed to happen in 2028, but it keeps getting pushed back. It was supposed to happen in 2024, then 2025, then 2026, 2027, and now they keep pushing it back further and further and further. And it's going to cost you, the American taxpayer, this current mission, which is making sure that we have the right number of non-white people and non-Americans and women who are going past the moon. It's going to cost you $4 billion. So congratulations on that. Aren't you excited to be going back to the place that we were at 50 years ago and we can't seem to get there anymore? All right. So that's going to wrap us up for today on the American Radicals podcast, guys. But as always, I will not leave you without a palate cleanse. We had a rough time here of it in Florida. The struggle was real. We had to drip the pipes. I had to remind myself how to do it. It's been a few years since I've been in an Arctic climate. But found this, and it's maybe a way you can pass the time. I mean, you can't do it in Florida, but like if you're like my buddy in George Hill and you're cooped up in New Hampshire where it's, I don't know, 100 below zero, and you want to get outdoors and do something fun, some sports. Football season's now at a close. Maybe you can do this one, which is like downhill ice skating competitive. This looks fun. I'm sure they call that a sport. It looks kind of more like an activity, semantics after all, but whatever you call it, looks like a fun time. All right, guys, we'll be back with you tomorrow on the American Radicals podcast here, rumble.com/amradpod, YouTube at amradpod1. If you haven't already, please, please, please do all the things. Follow, subscribe, give us a nice thumbs up. Definitely give us a thumbs up, guys. We're slacking, particularly on Rumble. Come on, let's drive it up. And if you would, follow us over at Spotify as we're trying to grow there as well. Plan to be back with you again tomorrow, noontime Eastern. And until then, have a great day.
You've been listening to the American Radicals podcast. Find us on YouTube, Rumble, and X at AmRad.